I don't think anyone grows up expecting to live someone else's dream, and yet here I am, telling you about the life I never thought I'd step into, a life that wasn't even mine at the start, but slowly wrapped around me until it fit too perfectly to deny. My story begins with my mother, and the secret she carried in her eyes, a secret I never understood until it was far too late to turn back. For as long as I can remember, my mother looked at me in a way I couldn't explain. I was her only child, her son, but sometimes when her gaze lingered, it wasn't the proud, approving look parents usually give their kids. It was softer, more wistful, as though she was watching someone else through me, someone she had lost or longed for. I would catch her staring when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Sometimes, when she tucked me in at night, she brushed a strand of hair from my forehead as if she were fixing bangs I didn't have. At the time, I just shrugged it off as one of her quirks. Growing up, I always felt there was something unspoken between us. She dressed me carefully, even when I was little. My father wasn't around much, so it was mostly just the two of us. She wanted me neat, clean, polished, unlike the other boys who came home dirty from playing in the mud. She ironed my shirts crisply, taught me to sit straight, to speak softly. She said it was about manners, about being presentable, but deep down I think she was shaping me into something closer to what she wished she had. The real clue came when I was 13. I was helping her clean the attic, and in an old cedar chest I found a box of tiny dresses folded with almost sacred care. They were clearly children's clothes, delicate, frilly, stitched with pink ribbons and lace. I asked her about them, and for the briefest moment, her face crumpled. She recovered quickly, saying they were just hand-me-downs from a cousin, but her trembling hands betrayed her. That night I heard her crying softly in her room. It wasn't until years later that I learned the truth. My mother had once had a daughter before me, a baby girl who hadn't survived beyond her first year. It was something no one talked about in the family. She carried that grief alone, tucking it into the corners of her life, disguising it behind smiles and routines. And though she never said it aloud, I think I was always a reminder of the child she lost, the daughter she never got to raise. I didn't know all this until much later. But the clues kept piling up. When I was 16, she insisted I grow my hair out longer, saying it suited my face. She encouraged me to join theater instead of sports, nudging me toward roles that were softer, expressive, even feminine. I fought it sometimes, because I wanted to fit in with my peers, to be the boy everyone expected. But her influence was gentle and constant, and little by little, I gave in. The turning point came one summer evening. I had been rummaging through her closet looking for a jacket, when I stumbled across a dress simple, pastel blue, with delicate embroidery. I don't know why I did it, maybe curiosity, maybe some hidden part of me wanting to know why she always looked at me the way she did. I slipped it on in front of her mirror, awkward and self-conscious. And just then, the door creaked open. My mother stood there, frozen, her hand over her mouth. I expected anger, shame, maybe laughter. But instead, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, almost trembling, "You look just like her." I didn't know what she meant at first, but then she crossed the room and held me like she hadn't in years, as though she were afraid I might vanish. That moment changed everything. From then on, she began guiding me in small, deliberate ways. At first, it was little things teaching me how to stand differently, how to hold my hands, how to soften my walk. Then came clothes she happened to buy, blouses she said were too small for her but might fit me, scarves, subtle makeup tips. It was always presented casually, as if it were just fun or an experiment, but underneath it I felt the weight of something deeper. She was sculpting me into the image of the daughter she missed, and I let her, partly out of fear of disappointing her, partly because some strange part of me liked the way it felt. But it wasn't easy. Outside our home, I was still expected to be her son. My friends would never understand. I lived in constant tension, switching between roles, terrified someone would find out. Yet at home, when she smiled at me with pride as she adjusted a necklace around my neck or brushed out my hair, I felt a warmth I had never felt before, a belonging I didn't know I craved. The suspense of living two lives gnawed at me. Once, my aunt visited unexpectedly, and my mother had just finished painting my nails. I panicked, trying to scrub off the polish, but my mother calmly wrapped my hands in dish gloves and told me to help her wash vegetables. She covered for me so effortlessly, it was as though she had rehearsed it. That's when I realized, she wasn't just indulging me. She was protecting this secret as fiercely as I was. The transformation deepened over the years. By the time I was in college, I had an entire wardrobe tucked away in my closet, carefully curated by her. Dresses, skirts, jewelry all chosen with a strange precision, as though she knew exactly what I needed before I did. She told me stories about the daughter she lost, not in full detail, but enough for me to understand that I was living in her shadow, becoming the person she never got to raise. I wrestled with guilt. Was I just a replacement? Was I betraying myself by letting her mold me this way? Sometimes I wanted to stop, to tell her no. But every time I tried, she would look at me with those eyes, full of fragile hope, and I couldn't bring myself to shatter it. I convinced myself it was temporary, that I was only doing it for her. But the truth was, a part of me had begun to see that girl in the mirror too, and she didn't look like a stranger. The most dramatic moment came the day my father returned. He had been absent for years, working abroad, and he had no idea about the life we had built in his absence. My mother insisted I greet him as I was fully dressed, hair styled, makeup subtle but unmistakable. I thought she was out of her mind. I begged her not to force me, but she said calmly, if he loves us, he will accept you. If not, then he never truly knew who we are. I walked into that living room trembling, every nerve screaming. My father's face went pale. At first, he thought it was some kind of joke. Then his expression hardened, confusion twisting into anger. But my mother stood beside me, her hand firm on my shoulder, and said with unshakable conviction, "This is my daughter. This is who she is." The room fell into a silence so heavy I thought it might crush me. I braced myself for rejection, for the explosion I was sure would come. But instead, he turned away, pacing, his fists clenched. Hours passed before he spoke again. His words were not kind, but they were not final either. He left that night, slamming the door, and for weeks we didn't know if he'd come back. During that time, I saw my mother's strength clearer than ever. She wasn't just shaping me for her sake, she was standing up for me, protecting me with a ferocity I had never seen before. When he finally returned, he didn't bring approval, but he brought silence, and sometimes silence is a kind of truce. He never called me his daughter, never encouraged me, but he didn't stop me either. In his own way, he yielded to the life my mother had claimed for me. And so I became the daughter my mother secretly missed, not out of some grand choice, but out of a slow unfolding, a dance between her grief and my hidden self. It was messy, complicated, filled with moments of fear and doubt. But it was also real. Over time, I stopped thinking of it as pretending. The girl in the mirror was no longer someone I was trying to imitate. She was me. Now, when I look back, I realize the suspense wasn't just about hiding from the world, it was about discovering who I really was beneath the expectations. My mother may have started it by shaping me into her memory, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being about her and started being about me. I wasn't just filling a void in her heart. I was uncovering my own truth. People ask me if I regret it, if I resent her for guiding me this way. The answer is complicated. There are days I wonder who I might have been if she had never whispered, "You look just like her." But there are also days I'm grateful, because in her longing she gave me the courage to step into a version of myself I might have been too afraid to find alone. The suspense of my life isn't over. I still face questions, still carry secrets, still live with the shadow of her lost daughter beside me. But one thing is certain, I am no longer just her son. I am the daughter my mother missed, and in becoming her, I found myself. After that summer, when my father's silence finally became a reluctant truce, life at home shifted in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about wearing the dresses or learning the curves of a softer walk anymore, it was about inhabiting a world that I never thought I belonged to. School became a minefield. I had to navigate the hallways carefully, choosing when to present myself in ways that felt safe, when to let the girl in the mirror breathe, and when to hide behind the boy everyone expected. Each day was a careful calculation, a balancing act, and every glance felt like a test. There was one moment in particular that changed everything. I had joined the drama club, as my mother had subtly nudged me to do, and the director assigned me a lead role in a school play, a character who was, unsurprisingly, female. I froze. My stomach turned. This wasn't like trying on a dress at home where it was private and safe. This was public, under bright lights, with the entire school watching. I thought about telling my mother I couldn't do it, that I couldn't face it, but when I saw her face, eyes full of hope and a quiet, trembling pride, I couldn't say no. Rehearsals were torturous at first. Every gesture, every line, felt foreign. My voice wavered. My peers laughed sometimes, thinking I was awkward, but my mother had taught me to hold my chin high, to breathe in confidence even when I didn't feel it. Slowly, I began to feel something strange, a growing comfort in this version of myself. By the second week, when I twirled in costume for the first time, I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. I was inhabiting her world, the world my mother had silently longed for, and the thrill of it was intoxicating. But the outside world was not always kind. Rumors began to spread, whispers behind lockers and in the cafeteria. I heard someone call me the girl who isn't really a girl, and it stung more than I expected. For a moment, I questioned everything. Maybe my mother was wrong, maybe I was wrong, but then I would go home, and she would meet me at the door with that same fragile, unwavering smile, and I knew I couldn't give up. I wasn't just doing this for her anymore. I was doing it for me, for the first time in my life, even if I didn't fully understand myself yet. Things escalated further when my mother decided it was time for me to experience more than just home and school. She suggested I attend a weekend art workshop in the city, one filled with creative kids and open-minded teachers. At first, I panicked. Public transportation alone, meeting strangers, wearing the outfits she had carefully chosen, it all felt terrifying. But she looked at me with that familiar mix of longing and courage, and she said, "You're ready. Don't hide who you are. Not from them, and not from yourself." The weekend was a revelation. I met other kids who didn't fit neatly into the boxes their families had made for them. They didn't judge me, they celebrated me. I felt an electric mix of fear and freedom as I walked into a room where no one knew my past, no one carried the weight of my mother's lost daughter in their eyes, and I could just be. For the first time, I realized that what I thought was a secret burden could also be a gift, a way to step fully into myself without apology. Returning home, I noticed a subtle change in my mother. She seemed lighter somehow, as if the shadow of her lost child had finally found a shape in me. One evening, while helping her cook dinner, I caught her humming quietly to herself, and when I asked what the song was, she looked at me, eyes glistening, and said, "It's just a tune I used to sing to her. Now I can sing it to you." My heart swelled with emotion. For years, I had been scared of becoming a replacement, of stepping into someone else's grief. But now I saw it differently. In giving her hope, she had given me life. College brought new challenges. I had to live semi-independently, and for the first time, I had to navigate the world fully on my own terms. I experimented more boldly with clothes, hairstyles, even subtle makeup, and each time I did, I carried my mother's quiet support with me. There were moments of humiliation, like when a roommate accidentally walked in while I was getting ready, or when strangers stared on the street, but I held my head high. I learned to laugh off the comments, to embrace the curiosity in others' eyes as an opportunity to assert who I was, not who they expected me to be. Romance, too, became a complicated landscape. I found myself drawn to people who didn't care about labels or appearances, who saw the person beneath the surface. Yet even here, the echoes of my mother's lost daughter lingered. Sometimes I wondered if I was seeking love for myself, or if I was unconsciously trying to fill the void left in my mother's heart. It was messy, confusing, and profoundly human. Years passed, and I grew into the daughter my mother had always secretly missed, but more importantly, I grew into myself. I learned to carry both roles, the one the world assigned me and the one I had chosen. I learned that courage wasn't about loud proclamations or defying everyone at once. It was about showing up every day, in the small choices, the quiet acts of honesty and vulnerability. And then one night, as we sat together looking through old photo albums, she placed a hand on mine and whispered, "I always wondered what it would have been like if she had lived." Now I know. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. The tears in my eyes spoke for both of us. She had lost a daughter once, but through me, she had found her again. And I had found something I didn't even know I was missing, A place where I belonged, not as a replacement, but as myself. Looking back, I understand now that the suspense, the fear, and the secrecy weren't obstacles, they were the very threads that wove me into the life I live today. I am her daughter, yes, but I am also a person who discovered courage through someone else's grief, who found identity in the quietest corners of loss and longing. I have learned to move through the world with a softness and strength I never knew I possessed, and I carry my mother's hopes alongside my own, intertwined yet distinct. The journey isn't over, and perhaps it never will be. Every day brings new challenges, moments of doubt, and the need for courage. But as I stand in front of the mirror now, seeing the person I have become, I feel a deep sense of peace. I am no longer simply filling a void in my mother's heart. I am living a life that is mine, shaped by love, memory, and the quiet magic of becoming. I am the daughter my mother secretly missed, and in being her, I have finally found me. The turning point came unexpectedly, on a rainy afternoon when the world outside seemed to mirror the storm inside me. My father had come home, unannounced, after months of silence. I was sitting in the living room, curled up with a book, wearing a soft dress my mother had picked for me, and I felt the tension in the air before I even heard him step through the door. My mother was in the kitchen, pretending not to notice, but I could see her holding her breath. I knew this confrontation would either break us or finally set us free. He stopped at the doorway, staring. His eyes flicked over me, lingering too long, searching for something he didn't want to find. I could feel his judgment radiating off him, the weight of years of absence, disbelief, and expectations all pressing down on me. I wanted to shrink, to run, to hide in the shadows, but my mother's presence anchored me. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She just stood tall beside me, her hand brushing against mine ever so lightly, a silent signal that I wasn't alone. You're dressed like this?" His voice cracked, somewhere between anger and confusion. I don't even know what to say. I took a deep breath, feeling my heartbeat loud in my ears. "You don't have to understand," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is who I am." He laughed, a harsh, brittle sound, but there was no humor in it. "Who you are. You're this. This isn't real. This isn't who you're supposed to be." I felt a surge of something unexpected, anger, perhaps, but also courage. For years, I had hidden in corners, tiptoeing through life to avoid this confrontation. Now I stood in the center of it, fully myself. "I am real," I said. "I've always been real. I just never had the courage to show it until now." My mother stepped forward. "He is my daughter," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Not because he looks like her, but because this is who he chooses to be. And I will not let anyone erase that." For a long moment, silence fell. The rain pounded against the windows, loud enough to fill the gaps where words failed. I could see something shifting in my father's eyes: confusion, disbelief, perhaps even fear, but beneath it, I glimpsed a flicker of something else: recognition, a begrudging awareness that the person standing before him was no longer the son he thought he knew. Days passed. The tension didn't disappear overnight, but something subtle changed. He didn't apologize. He didn't fully accept me. But he stopped trying to control me, stopped arguing, stopped insisting I conform. For the first time, I felt a quiet victory, not a loud celebration, but a gentle, profound acknowledgement that I had claimed my own identity, and nothing he said could take it away. Life after that confrontation became a delicate balance between freedom and vigilance. I continued college, continued exploring who I was, but now I did so with a newfound confidence. I experimented boldly, tried new styles, and embraced my femininity without hesitation. And every evening, when I returned home, my mother greeted me with that same unwavering pride, and we shared moments of quiet celebration, soft laughter over tea, whispered stories of the daughter she never had, hands brushing as we folded clothes together. One evening, as we were sorting through old photographs, I noticed a picture of my mother with a little girl, the baby she had lost so many years ago. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw the weight of her grief, the longing that had shaped my childhood, reflected back at me. I realized that through me, she had been given a second chance, a way to live with that loss and find joy again. I also realized that through her, I had found myself. The courage to live authentically, to face fear, to embrace identity despite the world's expectations. It all came from her love, her grief, and her quiet insistence that I could be more than I ever imagined. The ultimate moment came when I stood before a mirror, fully dressed, makeup carefully applied, hair falling perfectly around my shoulders. I looked at myself, not as a reflection of someone else's longing, but as a fully realized person. The girl in the mirror was me. I was no longer hiding. I was no longer a shadow or a replacement. I was real, I was alive, and I was whole. And then my mother came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. "You've become her," she whispered, "and you've become yourself at the same time." I closed my eyes, leaning into her embrace, and for the first time, I felt complete. Not just as the daughter she secretly missed, but as the person I had always been, waiting for permission to exist. Life continues, as it always does. There are moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when the world feels too heavy, too rigid, too unkind. But I have learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. And with my mother by my side, with the daughter she longed for living fully through me, I have learned to meet the world as I am, unafraid, unashamed, and unstoppable. Every day, when I step out of the house and face strangers, peers, and the inevitable whispers, I carry her hope, my own identity, and the weight of a secret grief transformed into love and courage. I am the daughter my mother secretly missed. I am the child I was always meant to be. And I finally, fully, irrevocably belong.